This is episode 80 of the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I'm Carly Cade, and today I'm speaking with Evan Archard. Evan began his career in Hollywood as a songwriter and film composer. His work in music for films eventually led to screenwriting, first for CBS Television, then Columbia, and MGM Motion Pictures. Evan's latest screenplay, The Man Behind the Music, tells the story of Henry Louis, the unsung giant among the music producers/engineers of the rock and roll era. The documentary has gained acclaim in film festivals around the world. The genesis of his book, Anna and the Pink Pony, was his family's first Shetland pony. Duke came home to their farm in Oregon to live out his days when he was 31 years old. Evan's daughter began a lifelong love affair with horses, settled on his small, sturdy back. His wee size hid a huge heart. Horses bring magic into the lives of children. Evan hopes a bit of that delight jumps off the page when you read his story. Now, let's get into the interview. Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast, a podcast featuring interviews with equestrian authors who love all things horses and writing about them. In each episode, you'll hear inspirational stories from horsebook authors, including writing advice and marketing tips to help you write your very own horsebook. If you're an author, aspire to be an author, or simply love horsebooks, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Carly Cade, and creative writing makes my spurs jingle. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight. I'm Carly Cade, and today I am so excited to have Evan Archard with me. Hi, Evan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Carly. It is so my pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. It's really a great honor. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk with you. And my first question always is, how have horses touched your life?
Well, that's an interesting you ask that question because I've been thinking a lot about how horses have touched my life over the past few months because of things we'll talk about later in this interview. But, horses are really good souls. And if you think about the history of the world, it would have been a completely different place without the horse. I mean, before 1900, horses were literally everything. They were agriculture, they were communication, they were warfare, they were transportation, they were agriculture. And, there's no other animal on the face of the earth that can do all of the things that a horse can do for the human race. And there's no reason they should do any of them. I mean, they're 1,000-pound animals. They could simply say, I'm not doing that. I don't want any part of that. I mean, try to get a zebra to let you on its back. I mean, there's the perfect example. It's the closest thing genetically to the horse, and they want no part of it. So, I mean, horses are unique. They're wonderful. They're loving. With the possible exception of dogs, they're, mankind's greatest partner.
And you couldn't be more correct about that. I mean, they basically helped us shape the culture that we now live in as we know it, and they did it through partnership. And I understand that you are a horse dad. Like, you have a daughter who absolutely loves horses. So did horses come into your life through your daughter, or were horses part of your life and then your daughter fell in love with them alongside of you? How did that work?
I had a 20-plus year marriage to a really wonderful woman. We are no longer together, but we're still very good friends. And her name is Nancy, and she's Tessa's mom. And horses came into my life really, I mean, I was peripherally around them before we were married. But Nancy was a great horsewoman, and she introduced me to really the joys of horse ownership, horse breeding, horse showing, horse care. And she showed me how, like I said, how important horses are in our culture and our lives. And, Tessa, my daughter, has been riding since she was like 2.5, the book that we're talking about today actually is the true story of, well, mostly true. I mean, we've kind of used some poetic license here, but it's the mostly true story of the search for her first pony, whose name was Duke. and he was like a 9-hand Shetland pony, just a wee little guy, but just the biggest heart. I mean, he was just the sweetest little, and he lived to be 41 years old. You know?
Oh,
So,
that's wonderful. So, talk to us about this first book that you have and the inspiration behind it, because there's a pink pony involved, which all little girls kind of
well,
fantasize about.
it's called Anna and the Pink Pony, and Anna has stood in for my daughter in this book. You know, when we were looking for a pony for Tessa, we looked high and low, and Tessa's favorite story at the time, a story that I would read to her every night, was called Plugly. And Plugly was the story of a pink horse that nobody wanted to ride because he didn't look like any of the other horses. But then the horse show keeps getting closer and closer, and one of the little girls in this book, her horse gets lame. There's no one else to ride in the horse show but Plugly. She rides Plugly, they win the blue ribbon, and everybody goes home happy. And Tessa just loved the story. And so, of course, when it came time to find a pony for her, she wanted nothing to do with anything but a pink pony. And so I tried to tell her, I said, Tessa, that the story is wonderful, but in the real world, there aren't any pink ponies. And she would look at me and go, "Oh, right, sure, Daddy, right, whatever." And so we started looking for this horse, this pony. And eventually we found Duke. And so we bring Duke home. It's in one of those, I don't know where you live, Carly, but in Southern Oregon, we really get these magical autumn nights
Mm.
where it truly is like America the Beautiful. There's Purple Mountains majesties in the background. It's just that lavender, lush, wonderful glow in the early evening. And so we bring Duke home, we back him out of the trailer, and he's a red roan. He's got lots of white hairs in his coat. And when that little red roan, little pony body came backing out of the trailer, he was pink. And I don't mean just a little pink, he was pink.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so Tessa looked at me and she says, "See, Daddy, there really are pink ponies." And at that moment, I knew I had to write this book. I mean, I didn't know the whole panoply of what the book would be, but I
Mhm.
knew that this magic that happened that moment where a little girl's dream came true, it was just too sweet not to try to write it. And so, again, I mean, I've been thinking about this for my daughter's 23, so I've been thinking about it for 20 years, right? I've done a lot of other things in the meantime, but I somehow never got around to writing the story. And so when the pandemic hit, I thought, I don't have a lot to do now. Now is, it's like now or never. And so I just sat down and I wrote the story. I was very blessed to find Hannah Stern. And I want a big shout out to her because she's the illustrator of this book. And she did an amazing job. I mean, I could not have wished to find a better illustrator for this book. And I found her through Lori List, our mutual friend.
Yes, and Lori introduced us to each other, and now
Yeah.
here you are on the show. And it's just we were talking before we even got started. The horse community kind of pulls us all together in this really interesting way, and we meet each other. And it sounds like you had kind of like not only was the story in itself, the inception of the story, magical, but you also met a magical illustrator who helped bring life to your story. So let's talk about your partnership with
I
her.
had talked to some people locally, artists that I knew, and for whatever reason, it just never seemed like the right fit. And then one day I was talking to my friend Mary, whose book is beautifully illustrated by someone else, but it is also beautifully illustrated. So she and Hannah were friends through mounted archery. And I don't know if you know anyone in the world of mounted archery, but you talk about a community. It's a pretty small community because not that many people. I mean, a lot of people ride horses, a lot of people do eventing, a lot of people do, barrel racing or whatever the part of horses that you love. But mounted archery is a fairly small community because, first of all, it takes a lot of skill.
Mhm.
Anyway, Lori and Hannah were friends mounted archery, but Hannah lives in Washington and I live in Oregon. And so Lori connected us through email and through phone calls. So we start talking, and I sent her a manuscript, and she just absolutely loved it. And she has a degree in fine art. I don't remember exactly what university she went to, but she's a very trained artist. But she's also a a huge horse lover, and she'd always wanted to write a children's horse book. I mean, illustrated children's horse book. I think it's kind of probably important for your audience to understand kind of the dynamics of starting to work with an illustrator. And I think the most important thing I could say to anyone out there looking for an illustrator is make an agreement with them whereby they provide you with some sample work before you commit to actually doing the whole book. Have them send you pay them. I mean, don't ask it for free. I mean, but be willing to pay them for, a few sample illustrations so that you have a sense of what this is really going to look like. And Hannah, sent me some samples and I was like just blown away. I mean, it was like the perfect fit and I knew it immediately. So I would say, in the search for an illustrator, don't settle. I mean, I'm sure talented artists. If you're a writer, you work, in your community or in your circle of friends. But all talented artists aren't necessarily great illustrators of horse books. Just don't give up. Search for the right one, and you'll find it, and it'll make all the difference in the world.
Oh, and that's great advice. I mean, because this person is putting the visuals to your story. And I love that you mentioned that you met your illustrator through another horse book author, which is fantastic because that's like authors unite, and that's often how we find our community is by working together. So that partnership just makes me so happy to hear. So you met the illustrator, you guys got along well. She shared some sample artwork with you, and then you were like, okay, we're diving into this together. And you had already written the story fully, right? When you started working with your illustrator?
Yes, the story was written. It wasn't yet professionally edited, but the story is like, I would say 90% done. And so I went through the story and I uh, picked out about, I think there's 25 or 26 illustrations in the book. And I indicated in the manuscript where I thought there should be pictures and kind of a little bit of direction as to what the picture should be in that particular place in the book.
Mhm.
And then she, once we agreed to work together, she just started, doing storyboards, and she did sketches. She first did black and white sketches of all the pictures and sent those to me. And we talked. There was a few that needed a little tweaking here and there. I mean, they were all great, but it's just, as everyone has a different vision of their work, and so a
Mhm.
couple of them weren't quite exactly what I wanted, and they weren't major changes really. But she did make those changes, and then she went to paintings or watercolors. The originals are watercolors, and they were just great. I mean, and people love the book, but they equally love the illustrations.
And you have the book right there with you too. You can hold it over your shoulder, but you can also hold up the cover so people can see the lovely illustration. There it is. And I think what you're speaking to, like a couple things here, is like, one, you said, you had communication with your illustrator to help highlight the story the way you wanted, but you also said, not everyone's going to be the perfect fit. You found someone to illustrate your book that also knows horses, because that can also be a challenge, right? You find a beautiful illustrator, but if they don't know horses, like the ear movements could be not correct, or the tack could be not put on the right way. So you found a partnership with a person that knew horses to help you bring your story to life, correct?
Absolutely. She knows horses equally well as I do, and she's got horses of her own, and she's been a horse person all her life. And not only does she know horses, but she loves horses in the same. We resonate in that way too. I mean, we get it. We get what horses bring to our lives and to love the lives of children in particular. I mean, I think that there really is a special connection between horses and children. I mean, from both sides. I mean, the child senses that this is, a special animal, and the horse senses that this is a child and needs special attention and special love. And it's just a wonderful dynamic to watch happen. I've seen it many, many times over the years.
And you captured this message of love in this story. Like, this story for you is a story of love, and I know that was really important to you to talk about love during this interview.
Yeah, I think the message, if there is just a simple message in this book, is that horses bring magic to the lives of children,
Mm.
and this book is really about, in the bigger sense, it's not just about a little girl getting the sort of birthday present of her dreams, but it's about the fact that sometimes in the process of going for your dreams, something magical really happens. And I think that this story captures the fact that, you know, all this girl wanted was a pink pony, but in the end, what she got, what she really got, was a pony that she could make pink, in the sense that it was a pony that she could put pink ribbons in his mane. She could get a pink saddle pad. And it didn't matter what color the pony was, really. It
Hmm.
mattered that it was the right pony for her. It was the perfect pony for her.
Hmm.
And it was a pony that she could fall in love with, and the pony that could love her. And so in the end, as my friend Lori said, it was like it shows that true love is colorblind,
Mm.
and it didn't matter that the pony wasn't really pink. It was pink, you know?
Mhm.
So, um,
Oh, it melt my heart. That's so lovely. And I wanted to mention this too because you have a really cool background. I mean, you are a former Hollywood screenwriter and you're a songwriter and you love music and I love music. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about how working in that industry like helped prepare you to write this book and shift your creativity into a children's book, like songwriting, screenwriting, and now book. I mean, that's an illustrious writing career.
well, I think that the one thing that Hollywood taught me, if it taught me anything, is that, you just have to keep at it.
Mm.
That people are going to tell you your work is no good. People are going to tell you that it's all been done before. People are going to tell you that there's too much competition and you should just give up and go get a job as whatever, whatever it might be, something outside the entertainment business. But the reality is that not everything has been said before or written before, and there are still great stories to be told. And the main reason that people tell you those things is they want to, keep the competition down so that they can, perhaps succeed. And it's the people that don't give up on their dreams and keep at it that, it's like, I don't remember what golfer it was. It might have been Jack Nicklaus or it might have been someone else, but someone once said, the more I practice, the luckier I get. and, and it's really true with writing. I mean, the more you keep at it and the more you hone your craft and the more you become a better writer, a little bit of good fortune is going to come your way at some point.
Oh, words of wisdom. My goodness. And I think you just like hit the nail on the head with being a creative in general. You just have to keep going and going and going. I think someone I talked to said you just got to get to that one yes. And if you believe strongly in your art and your story and what you want to tell, like the right pieces always fall into place. Like you find your illustrator, you write the story, and there's magic in just putting that into the world and not ever stopping. And I love that you just shared that.
Harley, it's so true. It doesn't matter how many people say no to you. It only matters when the right person says yes. You can get 100 no's, and they don't mean anything. They
Mhm.
don't. That's the lesson that Hollywood taught me. Be tough. Keep at it.
That's so great. And I think the other thing to say here too is that art is subjective, right? Like not everyone is going to love everything, because it's art and it's a creative endeavor. So, it's like touching people, you're touching people just by expressing yourself and not and being unstoppable. And I just love that you shared that with us. Thank you so much. Given your history and that you've worked in Hollywood and you understand the business of entertainment and being a creative, how did you decide to put your book out into the world? Did you decide to work with a traditional publisher or did you decide to go the independent route?
Well, it's interesting. It's a great segue, Carly, because the other lesson that Hollywood taught me is that unlike writing a novel or writing a short story or writing a children's book, in Hollywood, when you write a screenplay, you have to let it go because it's
Mm.
it's primarily a director's medium. And once a director gets a hold of your screenplay, they're going to want to make changes, and that's their prerogative. It's their movie, unless you happen to be a writer director, in which case you're doing it all. But that wasn't my experience in Hollywood. And so when I decided to write this book and to publish this book, it was a very personal story. It's really, like I said, based on a true story of my daughter, and I didn't want it being changed. I mean, I wanted it being changed to the extent that an editor would go through it and suggest language changes or whatever. But I knew what what I wanted the story to be, and I wanted to put it out that way. And so I just decided that I was going to publish it myself through Ingram Spark. And I don't know if your listeners or other authors have talked about Ingram Spark. Amazon obviously only sells through Amazon. I mean, you publish your book through Kindle Press, and it gets sold on Amazon. But Ingram Spark will take your book and act as your distributor, and it'll make it available to every bookstore in the world and in various different other mediums. And so my book is available as a paperback on Amazon and as a hardback or hardcover on Ingram Spark. And it's in bookstores all over the place, And if anyone wants to purchase it and it's not in your local bookstore, any bookstore in the United States can order this book through Ingram Spark. They're a very reputable, very reliable book distributor. So, and once I had gone through that process and discovered those avenues for me, I just decided that that was what I was going to do. I didn't even try at that point to seek out a traditional publisher.
And aren't we lucky that we have that opportunity to now independently publish and be indie authors and have full control of our creations, from cover design to where we distribute it? And I love that you mentioned Ingram Spark, because that is one of the beautiful things about Ingram Spark too, is that you can have a hardcover and it is available to libraries and bookstores through a bigger distribution arm than just going the Amazon route. Yeah.
Absolutely. Also, I'd like to give a huge shout out. If you're a author who's interested in publishing your own book, I think one of the most important things you have to find is a book designer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's probably 1 in 100 authors who are capable of truly designing their own book and making it look, the way that professional books need to look. And I worked with a wonderful company out of Texas called TLC Book Design, and I'm sure they're not the only company out there, but they did a great job, and the book would not be what it is without their help either.
You just mentioned something that's so correct. When you independently publish, you have to take every measure to create the best possible product that you're going to put into the world. I mean, you've already mentioned professional editing, so the story was tight and it made sense, and you found your illustrator, but you also had it professionally designed. So when you upload it to Ingram Spark or Amazon, when booksellers bring it in, it is as quality as anything else out there, because you had to say, but you did all the right steps to get it to that place, right?
Correct. I mean, I think that it's crucial, really crucial, that you work with a book designer that knows how to lay out a manuscript so that it's going to look, like the professional books you see in bookstores. I mean, like I said a minute ago, I don't think that 1 in 100 authors are really capable of that. Even if they have a graphic design background, it doesn't mean that they know how to lay out a book. It's a totally different process.
Did TLC provide you with the files? You gave them the specifics of what you needed, so then you could upload it to Ingram and then KDP?
There was a hardcover file for Ingram Spark, and there was a paperback file for KDP. And they actually, in fact, even did the uploading. I just, gave them my account information and just let them do it, because then I knew it was done right and I didn't have to think about
it. That's fantastic, because there is a learning curve with some of those things. So to find a company that can create exactly what you want, you can proof it, but then they take care of that part for you. That's pretty special. So you found, again, not only the perfect illustrator to work with a great opportunity for communication, but you also found a company that can design your book for you and take care of some of the back end stuff.
I think that, it's like anything else in life. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day, and you can only be so good at so many things. And I know what my talents are and what my limitations are, and I'm very happy to let other people, take it from there.
You just really hit the nail on the head again. It's like, you have to know where your limitations are. You can't do it all, because it's a lot to do. And I like to talk about the independent author curse sometimes as like this big wad of gum that you keep sticking like more things to, and you keep learning how to do, and then suddenly you have this giant ball of gum and you're like, whoa, what did I just make, right? But to be able to like delegate things elsewhere, you're like, okay, I have to focus on writing they can upload the files for me and handle that part,
Yes, exactly.
But you get to make that executive decision. That's the
Right.
coolest part, of owning
Yeah.
your own work. So you can be like, I'm not going to figure that out. I'll pay those guys to do it so I can keep writing the next book. I know a lot of people are interested in writing children's books, and not everyone is an artist, right? So when you do work with your illustrator, like, how did you decide how it was going to go? Like, did you pay her up front for all the images and then put them in the book, or do you do a royalty split with her? Like, so how did you decide on that partnership? Because this is an interesting part of being an author, is having someone else join your creative work. It's like a collaboration. So you have to like determine upfront how that's going to look, right?
There's as many ways to work with an illustrator in
Yeah.
terms of the financial end of things as there are in almost any other forms of contracts. In our case, ultimately, Hannah decided that she just really wanted to be paid for her work,
Mm,
and so we came up with a figure that felt good to both of us.
mm,
And at least for this first book, that's the way we decided to go. As we may talk about later, I'm in the process of just starting to think through a sequel to this book,
mm.
and Hannah and I haven't spoken yet about how we're going to deal with that book in terms of illustrations. It may be a different. We may come up with a different paradigm, but there like I said, there's straight payment for all rights to the art, and there's all the way down to there's only a single use. You can only use it in one place,
Mhm.
and everything else is going to be a royalty of whatever you decide it'll be. It just depends on, really mostly depends on how the illustrator wants to deal with that, because obviously if there's no royalty, you're probably going to ask for a larger sum of money up front,
Mhm.
and if there is royalty, you'll probably accept a smaller amount of money up front. So
Right.
it depends on their situation and your situation, so.
Yeah, and thank you for addressing that. Just because you work with illustrators differently. You mentioned the sequel. You went through something incredibly challenging. I'm talking to you from an Airbnb, and this has kind of inspired where you're taking the series and what's next for the book. But you had a magic moment with your book through something very tragic, and I just wanted to open the stage for you to share a little bit about that, and how something difficult has sparked your creativity, should I say.
Well, thank you for opening this door. I'd like to talk about it for a minute. I'm sure that some of your audience is aware that in the autumn of last year of 2020, there were horrible fires in Southern Oregon.
Mm.
And the day that I received the final manuscript of the book back from TLC Graphics, a version 4 publication, it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and there was really horrible winds blowing through our valley at that time. And I didn't really have a chance to really look at the manuscript carefully, but I just took a couple glances at it, and it was just beautiful. I was so happy with it. And then the next thing I know, not only horrible winds, but there's a fire that started literally like a quarter of a mile from our house. And the fire was called the Almeida Fire, and our home was actually the first house to burn in the Almeida Fire that eventually consumed 2,500 houses in Southern Oregon. And that morning, my daughter, it's a farm where we live, is a farm, and she comes over every day because she's a horse trainer and she trains her horses there. And so she was already there, and we could just see the fire just literally a quarter of a mile away, and the wind was blowing like 60 miles an hour. And suddenly there was just hot spots everywhere around our barn, around the house, and there was flames. So we were trying to fight this fire, and for whatever reason, the fire department wasn't there yet, and we were trying to fight it by ourselves. But then the power company cut off the power, because that's what they do when there's fires. And so when you live on a piece of rural property, your water system is a well. And so without power, we had no water. And so we had no real ability to fight this fire.
Oh my goodness.
And so at that point, it was really getting, I mean, the wind was blowing smoke so thick you could hardly see. And so my daughter and I, but really mostly her at first, started to lead the horses. There were 7 horses and 4 cows and a couple of goats and a miniature donkey, quite a menagerie. She started to lead them up to the upper pasture, which was irrigated, and we thought they might be safe up there for a while. But then the fire got even worse, and we had to lead them up onto the road, with the hope of, getting them somewhere else. And we'd called some friends, and we thought there was going to be horse trailers available to take these animals away. But all at that point, all the roads were blocked, and they wouldn't let anybody through. And so my daughter took the alpha horse named Happy. He's a big Swedish warm blood, huge, powerful animal, and she took him by the with on a lead rope and started walking him down the road. And miraculously, all of the other horses followed Happy, and we got them far enough away around the bend, about a half mile away, where there was another farm that was kind of just out of the fire range, and they were all safe there for long enough that we could make some other plans. But she was really Wonder Woman. I was trying to save what I could around the house, and by the time we got all these horses out to the road, I ran back into the house and was only able to grab a handful of photographs and the shirt on my back, and everything else burned up in the fire. But out of the ashes of that has come something beautiful. I mean, there's come this book that's the story of my daughter and her first pony, and this year, my plan is to write a sequel to the book, which is going to be called Anna and the Great Escape. And it will be not the exact true story. I don't want it to be too frightening for little kids to read, because it was truly harrowing. But I do want to, have it to be real enough that they could sense the danger and the importance of thinking on your feet in a crisis. And it'll be the story of how Duke and Anna save the other horses on the farm.
Oh, I just, my heart, we talked about this a little bit, before we started recording the interview, and just my heart just goes out to you for the loss of your home. I think it's just so crazy. Like, you got the proof, you looked at the book, and then this whole like crazy thing happened in your life. But the resiliency, the fact that you saved the animals, and you're rebuilding, right? I mean, this is just all so fresh, but there was also a story to tell through this whole thing, and you embraced it. And now you're bringing a message to how to think on your feet when something does happen, because that's life, right? It throws you all sorts of insane curveballs, and it's like, what do you make with that, right?
The other thing I want to just let your listeners realize is that out of this whole thing, I also am really filled with gratitude. I mean, we all survived. We lived through this thing. And you really kind of realize what's important. I mean, all of those things that I lost, yeah, there was many, many things that had special meaning and many mementos, but hopefully I'm young enough that I'll make more memories, and there'll be other mementos to have. And that I'm just so blessed that we all managed to get through it, and that's what's really important. I mean, all those things, they're things, and we'll get other things.
Oh my goodness. I just, Evan, thank you for sharing that with us. I mean, that's a very close to the heart kind of story. And I just really appreciate you sharing what you went through and showing that creativity can still come even through tragedy, right? So
Absolutely. And often does, and really often does.
yeah. I imagine that this series is going to continue and continue and continue. But at the moment, how are you reaching your readers?
We have presence on lots of different social media. We have a Facebook page, which is the Pony Press Book Company. And we are, we advertise on Amazon, we advertise on Facebook, we advertise on Pinterest. We also have a pretty good presence on Goodreads. And one of the other things, Goodreads is a really interesting platform for your other authors out there. I would highly recommend spending some time on Goodreads, because Goodreads is a place where people go to find out about books. And they have one particular thing that you can do on Goodreads, which is to do an author giveaway. And you take 10 or 15 books or whatever you feel like you want to donate to the cause, so to speak, and they advertise the heck out of this on Goodreads, and it reaches thousands and thousands of people who are interested in books. And all you have to do is agree to, it's a small fee, but then you agree to give whatever, like I said, if it's 8 or 10 books, you give a signed copy of this. And then these people review your books, and you generally get I mean, obviously, if the book isn't any good, you're not going to get a good review. But I mean, most people are somewhat generous, particularly if they've gotten a free book. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, seriously, I mean, they help promote your book by
Hmm.
both saying that they're reading it and then writing a review, and that's been very helpful. I obviously got a website, and we do some promotion through the website as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, again, it's like the big gumball. Like, do these different things for marketing the book and get the word out there. I mean, like doing things like this podcast and Goodreads giveaways. You're correct. Like huge reach there. I mean, because it's not just on the app, but there's also emails that go out around it, and the people that are on Goodreads are readers, and people clamor for those giveaways. I know what you're talking about.
The other thing that you can do as an author is you know don't try to get a New York Times book review. But if you live in a relatively small community where there is a local paper,
Mm,
you can oftentimes get the local paper to review your book and do a story about you, and
mhm,
then you can use that to build on other reviews and other avenues. I mean,
mhm,
the whole process is really what I like to call baby steps.
mhm.
I mean, it's like, when we're learning to walk as little kids, we don't run to start with. We fall down a bunch of times, but we get up and we trudge on.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like promoting your book. Every day you wake up and think, oh, what little baby step can I take to promote my book today?
Yes, I love what you're saying. That is the best way to approach it for sure. It's just little baby step, little baby step, little baby step. Then you get the big gum wad, right? And you put another
Yes.
piece of gum on it. But
Yeah.
and I love that you mentioned your local media, because I will say, Evan, when you reached out to me about the podcast, I was so impressed with the way you pitched me. You spelled my name right, which made me so happy. But then you also shared with me a little bit about yourself and loving the author community, and you just really had a conversational email that you sent to me, but you linked to that story in your local paper that told me about you and what you've been through and your books, and where you're going with your author career, and I was moved, right? So I was like, immediately wanted to get in touch with you, and you just did it with such polish, and you really did it well, and I was very interested to know you. And I mean, look at the great conversation we're having, but you came to me in a very polished professional way, and you presented your author self to me in a way that I could like totally get behind so that's part of it, right?
Well, you are being way too kind. But I do think, that part about being a successful author is, just simple things. Like you say,
Mm,
correct spelling,
mm.
a little bit of humor never hurts,
Yes.
and just, trying to put your best face forward. I mean, and I learned that part of it also through Hollywood, because just getting any door open in Hollywood, you basically, have to practically kick it open. But if you just keep at it, and you make a few friends, and those friends bring you to other people, and then so on and so on and so on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's about by doing right by people, and building relationships, and
Yes.
just being a genuinely good human. Oh, I just love this conversation. I always like to ask these questions because it's a little bit different for every author, and I think there's a lot of value in learning in these questions. For you, particularly given your background in Hollywood, but for you, what has been the most difficult thing about being an author? And then on the flip side of that, what's been the best part about it?
Well, I think the most difficult part about being an author is just getting started. And I look at it like I look at exercise,
Mm,
in the sense that, nobody wants to go to the gym really badly, and nobody wants to get up early in the morning and sit at the computer and face the blank page. It's hard. I mean, it's really hard, but you just have to do it.
mm,
I mean, it's like there has to be a no excuses policy. It's like, I don't go to the gym anymore because of pandemic, but I still work out 4 or 5 days a week at home.
mhm.
And unless you're just too sick to get out of bed, you do it. And it's like with writing, unless you're too sick to get out of bed, carve out whatever time of day works best for you. For me, it's first thing in the morning. I mean, I don't know if you remember, there was a songwriter, singer, very successful, named Lionel Richie back in the
Oh, I
1980s. He did
love him.
a lot of great songs. And I remember listening to this interview with Lionel Richie, and they said, "Well, why do you, write your songs at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever?" And he said, "Well, God isn't quite as busy then, you know." And that's where the inspiration came from. And I took that, thought to heart. And it's like, for me, when I first wake up in the morning, I am the most creative. I mean, granted, I need a cup of coffee. Okay, that's for sure. But after the cup of coffee, there's the phone's not ringing. I'm not worried about whatever else has happened in the day. No crisis has happened yet.
Hmm.
And I just block off a couple of hours, every day, and I sit down and I write. And that's what works for me. But it's hard, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, because you know that that's your writing time. And even if nothing comes,
Mm.
you're there if the creative spark hits you. If you're not there, you're off, doing something else, and you have no way to really receive it.
Oh, brilliant.
And the other part of that was, what is the thing I enjoy the most?
Mm.
Well, with this book, I have to tell you, I've done a couple of, even in this pandemic situation we're in, I've done a couple of live readings outdoors where there's lots of social distancing. But I've done it with a couple of groups of children that are in pods, that we have now with 5 or 6 kids, and they have a teacher. And just watching the way that the story actually touches the people it was written for. I mean, and they come up afterwards and they want you to sign the book, and they tell you little stories about their pony, and it just, you realize that, like any other form of writing, I mean, if you tell an honest story well, it reaches people,
Mm.
and that's the best part of it to me.
Oh man, that is wonderful. And that's the other thing about writing and art and creativity is like it's you and you're there with it while you're creating it, but then it's a gift to other people once you hit publish and you created something that never existed before. And then when words move people who are sitting around listening to you share your story, that is the very best thing.
And then, you get these reviews on Amazon or Goodreads or wherever you're getting, people responding to
Mhm.
Facebook, and they tell you how it touched their children, or in this case, it's a children's book, and how much they love it. And it's like, you realize that we are all humans, and we share a certain human experience. And if you, like I said, if you write from an honest place, and you tell a story that had meaning to you, and you tell it well, I would say that 9 times out of 10 other people are going to respond to that, because they were all built in a very similar way.
Mm. Yeah, the art of storytelling. It goes back in time with the horse, right? You know,
Yes.
we're connected through our stories and our shared human experience. And I think you said that so eloquently. Here's the thing I wanted to ask you. What advice would you share with someone who has a big dream, like really wants to write that book, or maybe is later on in life and has always loved horses, but has never put their foot in the stirrup, like, or someone that wants to write a screenplay and go to Hollywood and face the rejection? Like, what besides don't give up, because I got that message clearly earlier, but what advice would you say to that person?
Well, again, it goes back to a couple of things that I've mentioned earlier, which is, number one, it's all about baby steps.
Mm.
Don't bite off more than you can chew right away. I mean, but I mean, I think this last few years before all this fire stuff started
Mm.
happening, I have started a new hobby, and that hobby is dancing. And my sister, unfortunately, died about 10 years ago, very young, and she was a great dancer. And so I decided to honor her, that I would learn how to dance. And a- anytime you start something that you have never done before, you've got to be, A, willing to make a fool out of yourself, and B, give it some time to get good at it.
Mm.
And so I went to this local dance studio and diligently practiced. I went once a week, and then I started going twice a week. And pretty soon, I would say, within a year, I was actually not too bad. People liked dancing with me and it was fun. And towards that, I don't know if you've ever heard the song. It was a very big country hit, oh, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And the song was called I Hope You Dance.
Oh,
And it was written by Tia Sellers and Mark Sanders. And it was a big hit for a woman named Leanne Womack. And I just like to read someone else's words for a second and give them credit for how it affected my life and how it changed my life. And one of the verses says, I hope you never fear those mountains in the distance, never settle for the path of least resistance. Living might mean taking chances, but they're worth taking. Loving might be a mistake, but it's worth making. Don't let some hell-bent heart leave you bitter. When you come close to selling out, reconsider. Give the heavens above more than just a passing chance. When you get the choice to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance. And to all of those budding authors out there, I hope you write. Sit down in the morning and write. And trust me, if you keep at it for 6 months or a year, you will get better and your work will get better and you will reach people and they will make it all worthwhile for you.
oh, I'm like moved to tears right now. That was beautiful. What a beautiful tribute to your sister. What a beautiful tribute to yourself to go and like take something on. What a beautiful tribute to the songwriter of that song that you just shared this with us. And I'm like moved because I chose that song to dance with my father to at my wedding.
Oh my God.
I just,
Oh my
you just
God.
blew my lid, literally, Evan. You just blew my lid, and that was so beautiful. I love that song, and that's great advice for anybody looking for a dream. You're gonna look like an idiot at first, and you're gonna stumble and you're gonna fumble and you're gonna have to educate yourself, and it's all worth it in the end,
Yes, it's
right?
all worth it. It is.
Evan, I know you've got a sequel in you, but what are you curious about? Where are you going? What's next for you?
Well, interesting. I'm curious, as you probably can tell from this conversation. I'm kind of curious about everything. I like to. I think one should strive to live an examined life. I think that's a goal that each of us can share. But I've written screenplays, I've written short stories, I've written magazine articles, and now I've written a children's book. The thing I would also like to write, because of my experience in Hollywood, which is where the story really isn't yours, and I'm going to write a novel soon. I don't know, probably not this year. I want to get the sequel to Anne I've written first, but it's called The Ghost of Rock and Roll, and it's kind of a story about the Faustian bargain that a lot of us kind of make with life. And it's a story about a ghost of a classical musician that comes back to help a young aspiring rock and roll musician. And that's all I'm going to say about it right now.
Oh my gosh, I have goosebumps. That's so cool. Oh, I feel like I could talk to you for days. I just love that. We should all aspire to live an examined life. I love that. This is a good place to ask you and tell you, I have so enjoyed our time together, Evan. Like, you are just a pleasure to speak with and a joy. Where can listeners find more information about you and your lovely, lovely books?
Well, the best place is to go to the website, which is the ponypressbookcompany.com. And if you just Google that up, it'll take you there. The search engines are finding us pretty easily these days. So check us out there. On Facebook, it's the same thing, the Pony Press Book Company. And on Amazon, search for Anna and the Pink Pony. It'll take you to my author page. It'll take you to my Goodreads page. And, just remember, if you remember anything, just remember the Pink Pony even. And you'll find me.
And I will absolutely make sure to link to all those places in your show notes. And Evan's provided me with some really cool pictures, and and you can check all this stuff out in his show notes. And Evan, thank you for the gift of your time and sharing all this amazing wisdom with us today. I so appreciate you.
Carly, it has been just so my pleasure. You have been a great host, and I can't tell you how much fun it's been just to share all these stories with you. And good luck in your writing career.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I hope you enjoy these Q&A sessions with wonderful equine authors who love all things horses and writing. just like me. Visit my website, carlycadecreative.com, where you can read the show notes, and make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you so much for your support. Want a free guide to secrets of horsebook authors? Gallop over to carlycadecreative.com/wisdom to have author advice delivered instantly to your inbox. If you are an author who writes about horses and would like to be spotlighted, please let me know. Visit my contact page at carlycadecreative.com to fill out a request. I'd be happy to have you on the show too. Thank you for tuning in to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. See you next time. I'm your host, Carly Cade. Creative writing makes my spurs jingle.